Hello. So I want to share something that I put together this semester for myself to keep track of student reading assignments, but there are other possible uses that you could do for this. And I started out with an idea and then kind of went down a rabbit hole of how can I make this easier for myself to use. So I want to show you what I did, and maybe you can take something away from this. At least that's my hope. I'm going to talk to you about what my motivation was for why I did this and what I wanted to get out of it. And then I'm going to show you how I did it and some of the extra steps that I took to try and make it more user-friendly. I'm just going to do this in one take. My wife is very pregnant, and I don't have a lot of time to spend on polishing and finishing this to the standard that I would like it's to normally be, so you'll have to excuse any bloopers or anything like that, but I'll try my best to do it in a concise and fast way. Although I will start by saying that the some of the things that I do with the spreadsheet that I'm going to show are on a slightly more advanced level, where if you don't have a whole lot of comfort copying and pasting code, for example, that might not be the best choice for you. Although you don't have to do any coding yourself, there are some steps you'll have to take. And for the special code for the custom formula that I end up using, I will link everything that you need in the video description down below so that you can access that if you choose to do it yourself. And if you're watching this and you're like, you think this is a cool idea and it's something that you think you might want to be able to do yourself, then you can always get some extra help from us if you need it to get yourself up and running. So without further ado, let's get started. So first of all, my motivation for wanting to do this is that I put together at the start of this semester everything that I wanted to cover for my geoscience course, with the kind of knowledge that we were remote and some of the topics were going to be cut. I'm also going through a change where I'm kind of taking a look at the curriculum and changing some things up, generally speaking. So there was a lot going on with that. But I started out with this is the blooper part that I was talking about a second ago. I started out with my plan for basically like, what are the topics that I wanted to cover in geoscience? And this is the spreadsheet that I came up with. Now, this is not done yet, and I'm just kind of putting things together as far as assessments and as I go. But I started out by deciding what topics I wanted to focus on, and then I went through and picked out kind of the reading assignments that I wanted students to read as a way of kind of doing their reading homework. So I know some of these are page numbers and some of these are section numbers. Sorry. It's not that big of a deal. We can handle it. But once I had this done, I thought to myself, okay, I want a way to hold students accountable for this, right? Like, I don't just want to say, here, go read this, and then not have any accountability for it. So that led me to my second decision that I made. Sorry about the microphone noise. And yes, I'm drinking from an Olaf cup. Deal with it. So I put together a form, a Google form that students could fill out to tell me that they read. But I didn't want to do 15 forms like all throughout the semester, because then there would be like a lot of documents and a lot of things for me to look through. I wanted to do one form that the students could just go back to week after week and update their responses as they went. So that's what I did. So I started by creating all the reading assignments, kind of laid out the first question that I'm asking, and each of those is correlated to a section of the form that I created. So I've got all these sections 1 through 15, I suppose. And whatever they respond, so it will go to that section of the form. So here's all the sections, and then in each of these, I'm asking them some questions about the reading. I'm asking, some basic, this is just like DOK level 1 stuff, but all I'm really trying to do is assess if they actually did the reading and comprehended any of it. That's really all I'm trying to get out of this. It's just a check-in. It's not any kind of assessment, right? So I have all of these questions that I wrote about each of the reading assignments, and they're all organized into sections. So kind of here's what the form looks like for a student. The first page that they get to is just this kind of welcome page. By the way, do not forget to ask what class period they're in. That's like, I forgot, and it's really helpful to know that. We'll get to why later. So they choose anyway which week the assignment is for, and so then they go to that, and it brings them to that section, that assignment page. So they may answer those questions and then submit their answers. So, done. Now, when they come back to the form the next week or whatever it may be, they're going to get a little message that says that they've already filled the form out, but that's okay because I have it set so that they can edit their response. So they go in, they click edit their response. And what's kind of nice about this is if I tell them like, hey, your answers for week 7 were not very good, they can go back and edit those answers and actually basically it's like a built-in retake or redo, I guess you could say. But let's say week 7 was fine, so they're going to move on to week 9 with the next assignment. They're going to go in, they're going to fill that out, submit it, rinse and repeat all semester long. So it's one form for the entire semester. Now that creates a spreadsheet that is really big, and so that can get a little bit complicated. And I wanted to do some things to help myself organize and kind of keep track of actually holding students accountable for doing these reading assignments. So, there's a couple of things that you have to do to prepare for that. Now, I tried to use custom fields to actually like highlight and choose each of the weeks, but that didn't end up really working in my formula. And maybe someone can help me with that who's like a custom field Google expert. But anyway, that didn't end up playing out, so that was fine. The first thing that I did though was I want to count the total number of responses that the student has submitted so far. And then I want to count the number of blank responses, so the number of responses remaining. I suppose that's not really necessary, I just did it. But then for each of the week's assignments, I counted the number of answers that they submitted for that range of questions. So like week 1 only had 1 question. Week 2 had 3 questions, so that's where it cells A, B, C, D, E, F, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. I know the alphabet, so that's where I'm counting their unique answers between cell F and cell H, and it's reporting to me that they answered 3 questions. You can see this student answered 0 questions in week 2. But in week 3, this student answered all 3 questions. So I'm gathering all this information to start out with. So it's a lot of formulas, but really you're just kind of copying and pasting and then iterating letters of the alphabet for however many questions you asked each week. So it's kind of helpful to know how many questions did you ask each week, because then you just iterate down the alphabet. I eventually got to double A's and AC and AD and so on. But anyway, in practice, it's not that bad. The work is all up front, but it has a huge payoff, I think, for me later down the road. Maybe you're not like me, but anyway. The other thing that I did was I wanted to go through and I wanted to mark answers that were wrong, and I wanted to keep track of that for each student. So this is the part that I needed a custom formula to do. So the way I wanted to do this, and maybe there was a better way, but the way I wanted to do this was to read the answers and mark in red anything that was incorrect. So I'm just making the cell color any color I want. I chose red. And then the magic is a custom formula that counts the number of cells in your defined range that have that specific background color. So in order to do a custom formula, I don't even remember. You need to go to Tools and then Script Editor. And in the script editor, you can create a custom formula. So I have this custom formula called count colored cells. Now, I did not write this formula. I found it on the internet and I stole it. I didn't steal it. It was free. I borrowed it. The person who made it gave it to me. They're very lovely. Whoever they are, thank you. And I'll copy and paste a link to this formula in the video description, like I said. So the way this works, the thing you have to be, anyone can copy and paste, but what you have to pay attention to is what are the inputs that the formula is going to ask for. So it's going to ask for the range that it wants to look in for. So for me, that's going to be the whole row for any individual student. And then it's going to ask for the reference color to check for the background. So here's how this works in the spreadsheet. So anyway, you save your stuff and you go back to your spreadsheet, and here's the formula, count colored cells. So you use it like any other formula. You hit equals, the formula name is count colored cells. The range here is row 5, E5 through AL5, so everything for this student. And then the reference cell, you have to use these dollar signs in front of the letters so that when you copy and paste the formula down the spreadsheet, it doesn't iterate what cell it's looking at. So that's an absolute reference. So as I copy and paste down the spreadsheet, we're going row 2, row 3, row 4, row 5. But the reference cell is always D58. That's never going to change. It's an absolute reference. So in cell D58, I just have a cell here that has that background color. That's my reference color. And then so what the formula does is it counts the number of students, it counts the number of red cells. Now, here's the tricky thing. This formula doesn't automatically update. So let's say that, I'm grading a student's work and they got another one wrong and I marked it red. The cell does not automatically update itself in this case, and the fastest way I found to fix this is to highlight that whole column, delete everything, and then edit undo. And that reruns the formula, and now you can see that value has been updated from a 3 to a 4. Great. All right, I don't actually want to mark that wrong. I'm going to let it slide the way it was. So I'm going to, again, delete everything and then edit undo, reiterate all that information. Boom. I wish there was, it seems like there should be a better way to force a formula to refresh itself, and maybe someone out there knows how to do it, and if you do, please tell me. But anyway, all that work is now done, but this is still not very readable. It's not very fast as far as, okay, now I'm going to go to PowerSchool and give these students some credit for doing this assignment. I need to make this a more organized way of doing this for myself. So that is where the pivot table comes into play. I am not going to explain pivot tables in this video. I feel like this is already going on for probably long enough as is. And if you want an explanation of how pivot tables work, I would be happy to make a separate video about that. But to be honest, I don't even know if anyone out there right now is going to be even interested in what I did here. So anyway, here's a pivot table. The values are the class period first of all for the row, and that's really nice. And you can see there's a lot of students who don't have a value yet for class period because I didn't have that question on there week 1 when I first sent this out. So as these students go back to that form and answer that question, they're eventually going to get grouped into whatever class period they respond, which is really nice, because then when it goes to grading, I actually know what class period I'm looking at, and that's great. So class period and email address are my rows, and then for my values, I'm using those counts, those formulas that I did to count the number of answers every week, and that's what's getting filled out here. The number of answers the student put in every single week from assignment 1 all the way to assignment 15 or whatever, week 18. And then finally a value for how many answers I have marked wrong. So this is an indication to me now, all those cells that I colored in red, it's telling me how many answers has this student answered that were incorrect. And this is not a punitive kind of thing. What this is to me is like, this is saying, okay, I really need to talk to this kid and get them some help comprehending the reading, because clearly this is not going well so far. They're either trying and they're just not getting it, or they're just filling out the form randomly and not actually doing the work. But either way, I need to have a conversation with this student and address it. So that's just kind of that easy way. And again, now I have everything in one table in an organized way for me to actually see what's going on with my students. And then I have, this is just a reference for me. How many questions did I ask each week? So in week 1, I asked 1 question. In week 2, I asked 3, and so on, just so that I can keep that in mind when I'm actually looking at these and deciding to give credit or not in Power School. I just have this little reference for myself here on the side. So that's what I did, and it was a lot of work, but I do feel like at the end of the day, it really is it's a way for me to hold students accountable for these reading assignments. And that's something that I'm going to be honest, that's something that I've struggled with throughout my teaching career, is how to give homework assignments like these and hold students accountable for them. If we were in the classroom, we do things like exit tickets, we do things like bell ringers and things like that. But it becomes organizationally a lot to keep track of. And I thought to myself this semester that if I could put it all in one place, I'd have all that data in one consolidated location, and it would be organizationally a lot easier for me to keep track of. And I feel like with remote learning, going back to the whole motivation for this in the first place, having one single form that the students can go back to every week to fill out is a lot better than having 14 or 15 individual forms throughout the semester. So I just think organizationally, this was a lot better for me. Organization is something that I struggle with, and this is something that I wanted to do to try and help myself out. So that's what I did. So if you have questions, we're happy to help, and we're here for you guys. This is something that I wanted to share because I'm quite proud of it, if I'm being honest, and I hope that there's at least one other person who might have the idea to try something like this. And if you do, and you want some help getting it set up and running, just let me know, and I'll be happy to help you guys out. So thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your day, whatever time of day it is right now, and we'll talk to you guys next time. Bye, everyone.